Hey guys, this is the Country Road Podcast. I'm Tyler Pepe.
I'm Brandon Cork, and this is a WVU football podcast by two WVU fans for WVU fans.
All right, guys, what we're going to do today is we are going to recap the Virginia Tech game, and then we are going to give you a preview for the Oklahoma game. So let's get right into it. Some big highlights for the Virginia Tech game. First off, that put Letty Brown over 2,000 career rushing yards. That put him in some elite company. Looking at the names, it was like Avon Cover, Pat White, even guys all the way back to Rogers, like back in the 20s. So that is a pretty special day for Letty. Plus, he had a huge game. Not everyone had a huge day. I was kind of shocked to see this. I saw Daggy. This was from PFF, Pro Football Focus. This was his worst rated game, according to them, that he's ever had while at WVU. That's a shout out to Voice of Morgantown. That's where I saw that info. I couldn't verify this, but I saw we had a record for team tackles for a loss. We had 10 against Virginia Tech. This is only the second-rate team that we beat while under Neal Brown, so that's a big day. Even though Daggy's play, he didn't have the best day, Neal Brown in his press conference on Tuesday took a lot of credit, or maybe it was on Saturday right after the game. He took a lot of the blame, which we'll get into that. I'm sure we each have strong opinions on who's to blame for that performance. It was a huge win, though, so I don't want to be negative about it. And it was definitely a huge turning point. Without that win, I'm sure a lot of fans turn on Neal Brown if he ends up blowing that game. Daggy would have received an incredible amount of criticism. He probably will still get some criticism, but man, if we would have lost that game off that interception, people would have looked at him completely differently. The discussion to enter the ACC might have started to fade if we don't beat a team like Virginia Tech. And, no one would have any confidence heading into the Oklahoma game, not a shred of it. So getting that win was big for many, many reasons. What did you think about that?
I agree with all your points there. I didn't know the thing about Letty. That's really interesting. And, I agree with the fact that it does keep the ACC hopes alive. I know there's kind of some rumors that Tony Creedy sent out there kind of cryptically that, just kind of wait and be patient and good things will happen. So I'm keeping my hopes up for that. And it's good to beat an ACC team, especially one that's, pretty highly regarded, at least historically. But I kind of looked at the game in two halves. So the first half I thought was fantastic. I loved the play calling, even though it wasn't always executed the best. I loved that, a lot of what they were letting Daggy do was throw the ball deep, throw the ball short, force the defense to kind of respect his deep ball. Even if he wasn't making the passes, he did have one nice one to Bryce Ford Wheaton. I did also like how much they were feeding Letty. Obviously that's what you have to do. And it seemed like at times, especially against Maryland, we just kind of got away from that from one way or the other. I really liked that the offensive line seemed to handle the Virginia Tech defensive line. That was something that I think last week we were talking about how just scary of a matchup that could be, especially how aggressive they could be rushing upfield. They did let some sacks there. There were some plays where we didn't get anything, but that's just football. I was very impressed with the way they played. Obviously they weren't perfect, but if they can perform like that every week, I'll be happy. I did like the amount of motion that they used. Before it seemed like they weren't using motion very often, and in that game they were using motion on almost every play, and they were using it in a variety of ways. They had plays where they were motioning wide receivers across the set in like a jet formation, even though they never handed it off. It makes the defense kind of respect that. They were also making motions where I thought they were kind of strange, but I guess just the way it manipulates the defense is interesting, where they were taking O'Laughlin or Banks, who was in at tight end, and instead of motioning him across the formation into like a lead blocker position, they were actually motioning him out towards the wide receivers. And that would, sometimes take a linebacker out of the box. And again, just getting one more guy out of the box to let Letty run. And he had such a good game that I have to think that all that motion had to help in some way, shape, or form. What do you think about the offense?
Yeah, I was happy with it early on. I actually heard an interesting rumor this week. I don't know how true it is. I heard that play calls from the 20-yard line to the other 20-yard line is Neal Brown calling. And then I heard Parker is the one calling, our offensive coordinator. Jared Parker is the one calling the plays in the red zone. And I'm not sure how true that is. If that is true, man, I love the play calling from Neal Brown from the 20 to the 20. And I know red zone play calling is way different. Maybe Neal Brown doesn't feel he's very strong in that, but if that's Parker calling those plays, I don't know. I mean, obviously a lot of people questioned it. I mean, in the first half, we are on the 2-yard line, 1st and goal, and we run 3 plays out of shotgun, all passes. When Letty Brown's having a huge day, I just can't even wrap my head around a decision like that.
Yeah, and I actually read, I think Neal Brown spoke about that exact red zone sequence in the press conference, and I guess the first 2 plays were broken plays. The first play I think was a bad snap, so that one makes sense as to kind of why it was so bad. The second one was the second one was really confusing to me. So if you watch it, I'm not exactly sure what's going on at all on that play. So you have, I believe it was Sean Ryan in the slot running a crossing route, and then the other 2 receivers on that side, and then the tight end stayed in the block. So I'm not sure what happened, and it looked like it was supposed to be a QB rollout, bootleg to the right for a run, and I can't think of any good reason why Parker or Brown would call such a play, because I could probably run faster than Jared Deggy. But it was just such a weird play call, especially with Ryan running to the left across the field and then Deggy rolling right. There was no one for him to throw to. So if it was broken so bad, maybe it was just a miscommunication. People didn't hear an audible. I'm not exactly sure what was going on there. And that just put us in a big hole, because we lost 3 or 4 yards on that play. And, when you're that far out, you're probably not going to give it to Letty. So you kind of have to throw it on 3rd down. And I think that 3rd down play was the one where Deggy was just late to reading the defense, and Sam James was open in the back of the end zone. I know we were in the stands that game, and we were yelling, Sam James right there, he's open, get it to him. And then 2 seconds later, he finally finds him. And by then it's too late. He has too tight of a window, and James can't get his feet down. So that was really the only kind of sequence in the first half that I really didn't like. Obviously, on the defense, which I'll kind of talk about now, is that, I think we did really good, except for that one drive where we committed penalties. We allowed Burmeister to get out in the space, run around. And one player that I don't like singling people out, but Vandarius Cowan did kind of a bad job of containing. We ran a lot of zones. So, in the zones, he was kind of the guy on the outside. And whenever Burmeister was getting out, he kind of tried to attack Burmeister's inside shoulder when he was trying to make a tackle, which then allowed Burmeister just to run around him. And that happened, I think, 2 or 3 times with him. It's just kind of sloppy. And for someone like Cowan, who's a 5th-year senior now, I know he's been injured a lot. You just got to, play better than that. And if you can take away those, 2 or 3 big plays that Burmeister had running the ball or scrambling out and making a play, then Virginia Tech might not score in the first half.
Yeah, the defense was incredible. Some great stats. I'll just get the 2 bad things out of the way. We let them convert a 3rd and 17 and a 3rd and 24. Obviously, you don't want to see stuff like that. And even in the Maryland game, we allowed them to convert a big 3rd down. So honestly, that's the only negative I can say about the defense so far. They have been great on 4th down. Virginia Tech was only 1 for 4. We talked about the lack of turnovers last week, and even the lack of turnovers against Virginia Tech. But heck, 1 for 4, that's pretty much 3 turnovers in itself. So that's huge. Virginia Tech was 6 for 16 on 3rd down. And of course, we got a fumble. Now, for the year, we're losing the turnover battle 7-2. which we
Not
got to
good.
get the numbers closer together. Yeah, it's not good at all. But obviously the defense has to create more turnovers. But for how well they're playing, I mean, do they? I guess they don't really have to. The offense needs to step up and take care of the ball better.
Yeah, for sure. And the one guy I kind of really want to highlight, well, I guess two sections on the defense I really want to highlight is the defensive line. The depth there is just tremendous. There was a play where Sean Martin, backup defensive lineman came in and he literally blew up the pocket by himself. It was just incredible. I think it was the tackle he was up against. He literally just pushed him out of the way and forced Burmeister to rush the throw. So just kudos to him. And then also, I've always been kind of impressed by Taj Alston, sorry. He's played really well so far this season. And then, not even talking about Messidor Stills, we know how good they are. But in the secondary, Adai, he's just, without him, I think we would have so many more big plays. He had a sack. He's always the guy coming up and doing what a safety's supposed to do and being that last line of defense and making sure no one gets past him. He's one of the leaders on the defense and he's so invaluable. We need to make sure he stays healthy because I don't think we have anyone even close to being able to replace him if anything would happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jared Bartlett. I mean, he had a huge game of 3 sacks. And the big reason why was that inside pressure you were talking about. Our line played great. And they were so worried about us up front with that pressure that Bartlett, and credit to him too, he's so fast, was able to get in there and just blow up so many big plays. Virginia Tech, a team that likes to run a lot, we held them to 2.5 yards per carry, 10 tackles for a loss, 6 sacks. So can't say enough good things about the defense. Plus, where they were the biggest and what they've been the best at all year is that red zone defense. I'm pretty sure they are the best in the NCAA right now in red zone defense. Out of 11 attempts for the year, we've only allowed 4 scores, 33% red zone defense. That's amazing. Virginia Tech was 1 for 4 that game in the red zone. 2 turnovers on down, a missed field goal. They've just been amazing this year.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think helps a lot too is kind of leading into the Oklahoma State game today, as I was listening to the Country Roads Confidential podcast today, and they mentioned that per PFF, West Virginia has the lowest missed tackle rate in the Big 12 at 12%. And that's like 5% higher than the second lowest. So, or 5% lower than the second lowest, to say it correctly. But it shows. I know after the first 2 games, I was a little concerned with our screen defense or outside defense, but we've improved on that. And that Virginia Tech game, they wanted to get horizontal. They wanted to stretch the defense. And I feel like we were swarming and people were getting there, getting multiple hats to the ball, making plays. And that's exactly what you have to do. And wrapping up, taking people down, not missing tackles. The defense just, it kind of makes kind of the hopes for the season kind of increase just a little bit because of how good they are and how good they could be. As some of these younger players like Porter and, some of the backups and the linebackers get more reps because, some Chandler Tomato, first year starting, Vandarius Cowan has been hurt off and on the entire career, basically. Jared Bartlett, this is really his first time getting a lot of playing time. You just have a lot of really young guys out there that are only going to get better with more reps.
Yeah, definitely. It's great that we have that youth and they can only get better. Couple swinging back around to offense, couple of good things that I noticed is all 3 games, a fast start, which is big and will be big against a team like Oklahoma. You're definitely going to have to put points up early and not dig yourself in a hole. And this past game, Virginia Tech, we had 5.2 yards per carry, and that even includes the sacks. So we definitely need to establish the run.
Yeah, definitely. And, kind of transitioning into the second half with Bartlett, where I think he had all 3 of his sacks in the second half. He also had almost a 4th one that ended up, I think, being credited to Stills and someone else, maybe Alston. But, just how disruptive he was, and he got a lot of run time there in the second half. The one thing I didn't like really in the second half was in the fourth quarter, we really didn't mix up our coverages that much. We were running a lot of quarters, just a soft zone, let them beat themselves, make them play underneath. And I think in some ways that can work. In the NFL, that works because you don't stop the clock when you get a first down. In college, it's a little bit tougher. So I would have liked to see them play a little bit more to forcing a turnover. While we did force a turnover with a forced fumble off a sack, trying to get our defensive backs in position to get picks more by maybe running some cover 3, cover 2. We may not feel comfortable running man, and that's fine. But, just mixing things up a little bit to make it a little bit harder for teams to, pick us apart underneath.
Yeah, absolutely. We were picking on our boy Staley last week for having terrible kickoffs. I said that was going to come back and bite us. Hats off to him. The kid had 4 touchbacks. That was a huge advantage for us against a team like Virginia Tech that normally kills us with special teams. That was great.
Oh, yeah. And to keep on special teams, maybe not to turn a sour note to things, but Sumter, he had 1 great punt, and after that, very, very inconsistent. I know that he's been around. He's been kicking for a while. Neal Brown's familiar with him. He trusts him. But, I want someone out there who's going to kick the ball a little bit further than 40 yards every time. And I think he only went over 40 that one time where the ball bounced an extra 20 yards. So just kind of going to show you where his ceiling is.
Yeah. Let's talk about the quarterback play a little bit. We talked about Daggy and his performance. I'm still kind of shocked that was the worst rated game according to PFF that he's had since he's been at WVU. I didn't think he had a great game, but I honestly didn't think he played that bad. What did you see out there?
I didn't think he played terrible. The one thing that I didn't, that I think hurts him a little bit is the fact that we did throw downfield a lot more. Because of that, it's obviously going to drop his completion percentage down, but you have to do that because you need to show the defense that he's willing to do it, even if he's not hitting it. But the one thing that I did notice that I think is really interesting and is kind of dangerous for the offense is that on plays where they're not running crossing routes across the middle, which they don't do very often, he only reads one side of the defense. So if you watch the plays, he'll immediately turns to the side that the primary receiver is going to be on, and that's the only side that he'll read. The backside receivers basically aren't even running routes. They're just kind of going through the motions. And, I kind of understand that, you're simplifying the offense for him. It's making it easier for him to kind of go through things, but good defensive coordinators are going to be able to key on that. They're going to tell their cornerbacks and safeties, hey, if you see someone just not running their route at all, you can bolt over to the other side. You don't have to worry about them throwing it there. So then instead of having maybe a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-2 matchup on your play side, having another safety or linebacker cheating over to that side, now you're dealing with, a 4-on-2 or a 5-on-2 situation with your receivers, and you're just not going to win that battle. So, I would like to see Daggy kind of read the field a little bit more, read the left side and the right side. I know that's a little bit more advanced, but, if he has a good pocket, just take the time and try, because, it'll just give your, receivers encouragement to run their routes and then confuse the defense a little bit too.
Yeah, I noticed that too. He stares down one receiver a lot. Definitely. Once again, we were talking about this last week. This is a guy who's been playing 5 years. And even when he was at Bowling Green, he started. So I'm just shocked that, he hasn't progressed further than he has. And yeah, you can't cut off half the field. You can't just stare to the right or the left on every time. You got to go through your progressions at some point. And I would like to see him check down a little bit more too, instead of making some of these really bad decisions. I'd rather get 2 yards than take a sack or throw an interception.
Oh yeah, for sure. And there was plays where, especially on that pick where, we'll probably talk about that a little bit later in more depth, but, Letty Brown was wide open on the other side, but he was just looking to the left to get the ball to Esdale because that's how the play is designed. But literally no one was covering Letty in the flat. So he might have had a first down. He might not have. There was still a safety maybe 5 or 6 yards above him who might have been able to make a play. But, at least if he goes down, the clock's running and you still have the ball. And then Sumter can kick the ball 30 yards and they get the ball to 50 instead of the 10. So, just something, the little things like that, we're not asking him to, be Vince Young. We're not asking him to, be Andrew Luck or anything out there. Just expand the game a little bit just to make us that more threatening. And on the point of, our other option, Garrett Green, I thought he did well. It's really kind of hard to gauge what else he can do besides run because he just doesn't really have that opportunity. I think every play except for maybe one was a designed run. And I actually think all of them were a designed run. The one pass that he threw was a botched snap where he grabbed the ball and threw it out of bounds immediately. So, it's really kind of hard to say if we had to put Garrett Green in full time, what he would do passing the ball. And, it might be worth taking that risk, but it's really just kind of hard to gauge.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. I thought Green played well when he did come in. You can definitely feel there's a spark when he's in, like, of maybe an exciting play is going to happen. And by no means do I just want Garrett Green to be the only quarterback ever out there, but I do want him to get more playing time. In fact, I think dual quarterbacks would be huge for us. Letting you play Green more and see what you got. Is he going to be the quarterback next year? Are you going to have to rely on Goose? Are you going to have to rely on a freshman like Nico? Like, I just don't understand. I know Neal loves Daggy and he's got a close relationship with him, but I don't understand why you wouldn't play them more 50-50 or 60-40% of the time.
Yeah, at the very least, what I would like to see them do is, sprinkling Green in between the 20s occasionally, but put Green in as the red zone quarterback. Just in situations like, like we were in at the end of the second half where, we weren't necessarily really comfortable throwing the ball. So we tried calling, some more, we did call passing plays, but, having Green out there to run around and potentially make a play, run a bootleg, run some sort of play action pass to the flats or something. He can do little things like that. I would love to see that. And then also maybe even him as a closer. It looks like that's what Brown was trying to do there at the end, but then we had the false start penalty and he put Deggy in. So, whenever you have to run the ball, keep Green in there, and then that gives you that extra element of surprise for the defense that they have to account for.
I don't know. I thought Neal Brown would be a little more aggressive when he came to WVU. He seemed pretty aggressive down at Troy, but I don't know. Have you noticed that? He seems to call things pretty conservatively, and I'm a little shocked by that.
Yeah, I don't know what it is with, his second half where he's just trying to kind of kill as much clock as possible. I don't know if it's issues with trusting his quarterbacks or trusting his line or turning the ball over. He's just, for whatever reason, like you said, super conservative. He wants to run the ball 2 or 3 times and then throw in a pass only if you have to. And if you're throwing the passes, throwing short passes. And we saw that a lot in the second half. Like, the one thing that I also saw that I thought was interesting was Sam James played 3 snaps in the second half. And I think he's been great this year. But the primary package out there in the second half was Wheaton, Wright, and Esdale. I think that, Wright's great, and I think Esdale had a really good game. I'm still up in the air on Wheaton on whether he should be playing as much as he does because he rarely comes off the field. But, a lot of the things that we're doing, running a lot of short routes when we are passing the ball, we're running the ball a lot. We're not really taking shots. So I think that allows the defense to cue in, bring their safeties up, and then not have to worry about those deep balls that we established in the first half. And, you're not going to score as much with that. So I do like that he's more aggressive on 4th down than we've had other coaches before, where, if it was 4th down, we were punting 90% of the time. He does play the analytics game, so I do like that. I do like that he does make kind of coaching decisions where, you're manage the game more instead of doing what like kind of Dana did, where it was just put your foot down on the accelerator and hopefully that you don't run out of gas. But, he does kind of seem like there's something about this team and previous year's teams that he just doesn't trust yet.
Yeah, there were situations in the 4th quarter where, we could have been killing clock and we weren't. He was being conservative, but he was being conservative throwing the ball and we kept throwing incompletions. So not only was he being conservative, he wasn't killing any clock. So it was a double, we shoot ourselves in the foot Like either be aggressive with the passing or run and take time off, because we were up by 13 points in the fourth quarter and we were just going 3 and out after getting a fumble, after, getting the ball back on turnover on downs. And we're not even killing clock. We're just running the ball once, it gets stuffed, and then incomplete punt. So, I mean, I don't know. I just feel like sometimes he overthinks situations. Like, have a game plan. Are we killing clock? Are we being aggressive? What are we doing? Because it seems like he wasn't doing either.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's fair. Definitely running the ball as much as possible. When you have Letty, I mean, we don't know what we're going to have after he's gone, so use him while you have him. And I would still like to keep on taking, not even deep shots, but intermediate shots. We're really not passing the ball in between like 5 and 20 yards. I'm not sure what the reason between that is, but especially in the second half, if the defense is going to get more aggressive, and Virginia Tech blitzed a lot in the second half, especially when they were down and they were running out of time. They wanted to force some sort of issue, and to be fair, it worked with the sack and the forced fumble and the interception. But that middle of the field should be open. If they're blitzing those linebackers, attack that. Don't stop running these screen plays. Stop running these stop routes. You can run some slants, which they did, but run some posts or ends or something like that. Just attack it. Make them having to account for it and punish them for blitzing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Overall, for the game, we were 3 for 12 on third down. One more thing I want to say about the game, and I was saying it while we were in the stands watching it. When we threw the ball 3 times on the 2-yard line, had to settle for a field goal, which was very frustrating. Our home crowd is cheering as if it's an away game, cheering for Letty, cheering for I don't know what. Why are you making so much noise, WVU fans, when we're on offense? It's called home field advantage. When we're on offense, be quiet. Shut up.
Yeah, it wasn't.
Do his thing. What are you doing?
I think, to be fair, though, it was, just a lot of adrenaline in the air for such a big game, and we were blowing them out, and we just wanted to kind of put that last dagger into them and destroy all hope that Virginia Tech had. So I can understand the energy and where it was coming from. But, when the players are telling you to quiet down, I can't hear my play calls, you might want to quiet down.
Yeah. And guess what happened on that play where they're chanting for Letty? The center has a bad snap.
The one thing I wanted to touch on outside of the Virginia Tech game before we jump to Oklahoma is just kind of Neal Brown, kind of like a barometer of how I feel about him. So, I still like him as a coach. I think he has a lot of potential. Obviously, he still has a lot of room to grow, but he does have some interesting positive and negatives, looking back at the past 2 coaches we've had. So, like with Bill Stewart, I think he was the best ambassador to the university that we've had. He loved it. He was never going to leave. Obviously, his coaching staff decisions, his play calling, kind of game management wasn't great, and that ultimately led them to bringing in Dana. But, he was a great person for the university to have. With Dana, I thought, it was kind of a new age for West Virginia. We never had, it was coming back to the high-powered offense that Rod had, except in a different way. I thought I loved what Dana did with player development. I mean, I don't think we've put so many players in the pros in such a short period of time as we had then. I mean, even if they didn't stick and they busted, it was just cool to hear their name called on draft night. But he did have, obviously, his really bad negatives, which he hired his friends. DeForest is obviously an all-time bad hire. His recruiting game was terrible, and I kind of want to lead into that with Brown, but he also wasn't a good game manager. But because of Holgorsen kind of relying so much on transfers and junior college kids, when Neal Brown came in, Dana's players transferred out, and then also you didn't have a whole big crew of players who had talent. So he's kind of having to rebuild the program again from scratch. And I think he's doing a great job of that. His recruiting's great. I love the way he communicates. I love the way that he has plans for the facilities and kind of big picture things. But kind of what's holding him back, in my opinion, is that he won't give up the play calling duties. He won't put himself in that situation that, where he can just manage the whole team and manage the coaches and everything else at a higher level and just kind of be that final stamp of approval for things. And I think that's the next level for him if he's going to, take that next step as a head coach. And, I'm not sure if Parker is the right offensive coordinator to have instead of Neal. Maybe we have to go out and make an outside hire for someone who's a little more creative. I don't know enough about Parker to understand if he's actually going to be a good OC or not. But, just bringing someone in to handle those duties so that he can focus on the team at large more. He also doesn't kind of seem to like making substitutions or bringing in other players. He's, it seems like after the summer's over, he doesn't want to pull the plug on someone. He doesn't want to pull the plug on Deggy. He doesn't want to, mess around with the kickers or punters or any of those issues that we've talked about before. So, stop being so rigid with that. And, some of this that we question too may just be growing pains, kind of like, why I alluded to with the kind of how he's managing the game. Is how much is it because he's still trying to bring in his guys, the guys that, he trusts to be in a position and develop them to a level where, he's willing to run the ball on 2nd and 7 to, get yourself in a 3rd and short situation at the end towards the end of the game to keep running the clock versus throwing the ball. And maybe it's just too much trust in Deggy over what he has in front of him in the line. And, kind of on that same point is just, his risk aversion with so many different things. And that ties back into, the substitutions, naming starters, not pulling players who are underperforming. Like, on defense, you have like a redshirt senior like Mahone, who I think is a great box safety, but as a coverage safety, he's not great. He allowed the touchdown today because his back was turned, or not today, but Saturday, because his back was turned on the play. I think Semedo isn't necessarily the best middle linebacker, and we're not really rotating other guys in there to give them a chance. So just little things like that. I don't know how you feel about Brown, and if you disagree or agree with any of that.
No, I mean, I like Neal Brown a lot. I still think he's a young coach. I know he was head coach at Troy before this, but yeah, it probably is growing pains. The biggest thing is, are you learning from it? I mean, that's what I want to see. Because yeah, some of the decisions, it just seems so obvious. Like, I know we keep going back to it, but you're gonna pass the ball 3 straight times when you started on the 2-yard line. Like, I don't know. There's just some things that I think coaches get a little too cute with the analytics, and they just overthink it when, you got the lead, you got the ball down to the 2. Sometimes it's just keep it simple and it'll work. I know I know if you take a lot of shotgun snaps, you're not gonna, want to make your quarterback feel uncomfortable and go under center. But we were going under center a few times that game. So like, you don't even go under center one time either from the 2-yard line and just try to be tougher than them and run the ball. I love that he's getting guys here who hopefully stay for 4 years, can improve. The biggest thing is he going to coach him up, which he hasn't been here long enough for us to see, but that'll be the big question. Is he going to make them better from a freshman to a senior? And if he can, then, I mean, then he's got it all. If you can recruit and coach up the guys, what more could you ask for?
You're right, 100%. And that's kind of the one thing that I really like about his future is that he does, if he can get more into that game manager, or not game manager, but team manager sort of role, kind of like a Mike Tomlin or a Dabo Sweeney or Nick Saban sort of thing, where he's hands off and he's just managing the team. I think he can do great with that. And maybe that's some of the issues where he's having now, is where he's trying to make the right decision while also trying to make the right play call. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're doing that over and over again in a tight game, you're going to make mistakes, because that's just a lot of pressure, and you need to be able to delegate that stuff. And I think, he's proving that you can bring in good talent to West Virginia, and if he can become successful, win a conference championship, or, the greatest thing ever, getting into the Final Four or whatever it's called now, that's going to bring even higher name recruits there. And he has a likable personality. I like his staff. They're young. They're, they seem like the players enjoy them. It seems like, they develop players fairly well in most positions. The offensive line and wide receivers are a little bit more, kind of dicey. But, you're going to have turnover in places, and, you're going to bring in the right guys eventually. He doesn't seem like he's someone who's tied to a Joe DeForest like Dana Holgerson was. He's going to bring in the best guys to help the program and help him with his job.
WVU is going to Oklahoma. It's a night game, 7:30. So that's a big opportunity for us. Oklahoma, last I look, is a 16.5-point favorite. Yeah, I mean, West Virginia, if they could go in there and, I mean, of course, if they knock them off, that would just be absolutely huge. We haven't beat Oklahoma since the Fiesta Bowl in 2008. But I mean, if we can even just hang tough and make this a ball game, I think that'll make a lot of West Virginia fans excited.
Yeah, and so as skeptical I am of the offense, I actually kind of have a decent feeling about this game. I'm not saying we're going to win, but I think it's going to be closer than what that 16.5-point spread is saying, just because it's kind of a perfect storm for Oklahoma. The past two games, they haven't looked great. And if Neal can put together a game plan that works, then, we can hang in there. I think our defense is good enough. You don't want to blitz Rattler, but I think our front four is enough. You get Bartlett in there, Stills, Messidor, Alston, get those four guys in there, pressure, make sure that you're running the zones, not letting them beat you deep, but just keep everything in front of you, make it tough, make Rattler try to fit things into windows that aren't there. That's what's gotten him in trouble this year is, throwing into tight windows and turning the ball over. If our cornerbacks can pick off a couple passes, we can keep the game close. It's going to come down to the offense, which ultimately I think is what's going to end up falling apart on us. But I think still it can be a closer game, maybe like a 38 to, I don't know, 31 type of game. I don't know if we're going to reach over 30 points, but, it could be that type of game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think this is going to go one of two ways. It's either Oklahoma is still trying to figure out their team and we're able to make it a close game and maybe even pull off a victory, or this is the game West Virginia or Oklahoma finally puts it all together and it gets ugly quick. We will see. But yeah, the advantages, the things to look for is definitely our defense. Our defense can make this a ball game. They run the ball okay. They only have 2 scholarship running backs on their roster, which is pretty weird because Oklahoma is just known for having so many good halfbacks that typically go pro at some point. They have Brooks and Gray who have been sharing the workload, which that's probably pretty important for them, keeps fresh legs. But yeah, Spencer Rattler, he will be the one who really determines this game. Probably. He's been very inconsistent this year. He's got 2 touchdowns and 2 picks against the 2 quality opponents that they've had. I mean, he had 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions against their cupcake game, but I mean, who cares about that? And against Tulane and Nebraska, he had 2 touchdowns and 2 picks. So I mean, he has not been performing all that great. And I saw a very interesting stat that passes beyond 20 yards. He only has 3 completions, 1 pick, and for a 56 passer rating. Shout out to Blue Bloods. That's where I got those stats. So I mean, he's having all of his success is coming from short throws, which is good for us because, well, like you were talking about earlier, our team can tackle well, and we proved last week that we can tackle well. So if we just keep playing the way we're playing, we might be able to, who knows, hang in this game and maybe even pull off the upset.
Yeah, and the one thing I was reading about today is that what Oklahoma likes to do when their offense is stalling is they like to run trick plays. So, and it seems like every time after they run a trick play and they break something open, that's when their offense starts to click again. I don't know if it's something to do with getting in the defensive head or just, moving the ball forward and just being a mental thing for the offense saying we can do this. But, being apprised of all the different little tricks that Lincoln Riley can pull out, because he is one of the best, if not the best offensive, play callers in college football today. So you really can't, take him for granted that he's not going to be able to figure things out. But, the one stat that I read about too is that Rattler, I think, has like a 85% completion percentage with like 5 touchdowns when he's blitzed. So just really important that you're not blitzing him, because he will shred you. He will find where that blitz is coming from and dump it off where that hole is. He may struggle with the deep ball, but, make them throw it. Don't let them pick you apart underneath. Don't give them those holes. Make sure you're running that tight zone like West Virginia's run the past 3 games.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've also noticed they've won the turnover battle every single game so far. So we keep talking about West Virginia and the turnover battle. That could really be a big factor as well if we can finally win a turnover battle in a game. Then who knows? That might end up being the difference. Looking at their defense, they don't give up rush yards, at least not so far. Only 83 yards per game that they have given up. However, their pass defense seems to be their weak point. There were a couple big injuries I noticed on their defense. Jalen Redmond on their D-line was hurt. Woody Washington was also hurt. From what I hear, they got a lot of other guys that they can plug in on that D-line. So we shall see. Hopefully that opens up the run game a little bit. And here's the biggest thing for me. Neal Brown has to keep trying to run the ball. Even if it's not working early, if he just gives up on the run game and relies on the quarterbacks and the O-line to pass protect to win this game, it's going to get ugly. They have to run and try to make it work.
I think, we have to run the ball too. I think the one stat that I saw is that Oklahoma is actually second to last in the Big 12 in missed tackle rate. So they're missing 20% of their tackles. So what I would like to see West Virginia do is run more, run some jet sweeps, which we haven't really seen yet at all. Run more powers, run to the outside. Don't let, the linebackers get out there and make plays. Make the safeties and corners make plays, because those are the guys who are going to miss the tackles. Run screens, but don't be predictable about it. They were I think it was Neal Brown or Esdale was talking about after the Virginia Tech game that on that play where Deggy threw the pick, they were calling out the screen. And every time, they ran that screenplay, the defense was calling out that screenplay. So they noticed it. And another thing from the Virginia Tech game that I forgot to touch on that, is a problem that Oklahoma is definitely going to key in on is offensively is when we run certain plays like those screenplays, we're trotting out specific people. Like I think Reese Smith was in on all of those screenplays that we ran to Esdale, and then he doesn't come in any other time really. So that's a key, and the defense is going to notice that. Plus, on that pick that they threw to Esdale, that was the only snap where Esdale lined up on the left side of the ball. Every other time he's on the right side of the ball. Every other time Bryce Ford Wheaton is always that left wide receiver, literally every other play of the game. And the play we threw the pick was the play where they aligned someone else up there. So it just kind of shows you that defenses knows what's up. They know they're going to key on these other little things. So you can't try to be sly and try to sneak things past defenses like that. And I'm going to see them, rotate personnel in, but not try to be predictable with their play calls when they're running these screens and things like that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I definitely want to see more motion. Just like we talked about last week, we wanted to see that in the Virginia Tech game. This team doesn't allow a lot of rushing yards, so you got to somehow try to freeze the linebackers a little bit, give Letty more room. You got to actually give it to the guy going in motion every now and then. And that's just another reason why I would like to see Green playing more this game. If you can't get the run game going with Letty, put Green up there, make them think, well, is Green going to keep it? And maybe sometimes he will, just on those read option plays if it's available. Well, you got anything else on the Oklahoma game?
No, that was basically it. I think, it's going to be interesting. I'm holding out hope that's going to be a close game. Maybe that's just the homer in me, but the defense just looks so promising. And the one thing against that, I guess, is that we haven't really faced a potent passing attack yet. So maybe Rattler is just going to shred us, and then all my hopes are going to be dashed that we have a great secondary. So it's either going to be a really happy Sunday morning, or it's going to be a really, really upset, depressed Sunday morning.
Early and maybe get a win, then this would be it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, this would getting Oklahoma and Virginia Tech back-to-back wins, as kind of unlikely as that could be, that could just completely change the course of this program.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it would buy Neal Brown heck, maybe definitely the rest of this year, maybe even next year. Because like we were saying, I mean, if that game would have went the other way last week, then everyone would have a different tune this week about Neal Brown and his job security.
Oh yeah, I mean, if we beats Oklahoma, I bet you the entire state of West Virginia would pitch in to buy him a yacht to put in the cheat lake.
Oh yeah, for sure. You have a good, a bad, and a wish for this week?
So the good was defense. I mean, the whole thing was just, I couldn't believe how well we did. I was so worried about the way that how much motion Virginia Tech runs, Burmeister, and how mobile he was, and we just completely shut him down. The only time they scored is because we gave them the ball in good field position. So that was the good. The bad is just the way that we ended the game. We let off their necks, so to speak. And, we made mistakes, bad play calls all around, just bad snaps. It just seemed like everything was collapsing around us. And, just being there, it was just so scary to watch because it felt like we were going to lose. And that was the bad thing. And my one wish is that we can keep it close against Oklahoma. I think that would go so far. Even if Oklahoma does lose a couple games this year, being able to prove that we can hang within one score or so of a team like Oklahoma and all the talent and coaching talent that they have as well. I think it's just going to be a boost, not only to the fan base, but to the players.
Absolutely. Yeah, my good would be the 4 touchbacks that Staley had. I hope that he can keep that up because I really do think that is huge. When you got a defense as good as ours, you never want to give the other team good field position. So if you can consistently get touchbacks, I think that is a huge advantage for us overall as a whole team. Red zone defense.
You love your special teams.
I do, man, dude. I think that's huge to make the other team go the length of the field almost. I think that's big. Red zone defense, without a doubt. Bend but don't break. I mean, yards don't mean anything if the other team's not getting points off of it. So those are my 2 goods. Bad, I want smarter red zone play calling. I mean, obviously that was the big thing, and everyone forgets it because we won. But if we lose that game, I mean, that's even magnified bigger. So we got to be smarter in the red zone and get 7 points when you're on the 2-yard line. You can't be settling for threes there. My wish is fans quit cheering when we're on offense. That drove me absolutely crazy. Save your voice when the opponent's on the field. And that's it for me.
I love it. It's great. And I'm really hoping that we have another game at Mountaineer Field that's even similar to that atmosphere this year. It was just great to see the fans so hyped up, and rightfully so. I mean, it's Virginia Tech. It's been 4 years since they've been here or we played them. So it needs to happen more often, whether it's a regular scheduled game or we end up in the ACC, preferably the latter, but I'd settle for the former. It's just great to see the student section filled, people cheering loud and being hyped about something that a true rival. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I haven't felt an atmosphere like that in probably 10 years. All right, guys, that's it for us this week. We will see you again, hopefully earlier next week. No, we've been doing these on Thursday. We're hoping we can get these out a few days earlier. So be looking for that. We will be recapping the Oklahoma game, hopefully a victory, and then we'll be previewing the Texas Tech game. So for Country Roads Podcast, I'm Tyler Pepe.
I'm Brandon Cork. Thanks for listening.
See you guys.